Yo, what's good, gamers? Aquilon here, and of course, welcome back to each and every one of you. As you know, last night it was the new cinematic for the War Within Threads of Destiny, which is, again, one of these animatics that Blizzard puts out. I expect we'll probably see two more, because Blizzard likes to release these in threes, which suggests there's going to be some interesting stuff happening in the next few weeks as we get more of these animatics. And these animatics tend to do a very good job of giving us insight into the main players and elements of the next cinematic. And this first one genuinely did not disappoint. I reacted to it last night. That's up on the channel if you want to check it out. But now, this is not a reaction. I want to make that very, very clear. If you're watching this and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to get to see Aquilon's reaction, no, you're not. What you're going to see is my discussion and in-depth analysis of the video. I've watched it a ton of times now to find every bit of information. There's stuff I might miss, and if I do miss something that you think is important, let me know in the comment section down below. Right before we get into it, though, remember, for Patreon, $5 a month gets you access to the giveaway at the 25th, on the 25th, of $50 to one random $5 a month subscriber. So head over there if you want to stand a chance of winning $50. And there's going to be more giveaways in the future, so do not miss out. Trust me, you want to be there. Anyways, let's get into it right away because we have a lot to discuss here. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we even start this discussion, before we even get into the cinematic, there are a couple of things that I really want to lay out so that people understand what we're actually talking about here. This cinematic, this animatic, as it were, really, in my opinion, sets the stage for what is to come in the World Soul Saga. I don't think you should look and watch the cinematic only from the perspective of what is going to happen in the War Within. I think that would be a mistake. There is so much that's being laid out in this animatic that it will not be covered just in a single expansion. So I do think this is something that is probably going to be informing things for the next few years in World of Warcraft. The thing I love about this animatic, more so than many of the cinematics that we've gotten in recent memory, is that it actually sets up real stakes. And it does this very, very interestingly. It does it with known characters. The Nerubians have been around pretty much forever, and we really dealt with the Nerubians very directly in Wrath of the Lich King, and even before that in Vanilla, we saw the Nerubians, or at least what would eventually become Nerubians, play out. So the Nerubians is not a new phenomena in World of Warcraft. That immediately helps. We've spoken about this, especially during Shadowlands. When you have characters that is completely alien to the audience and unknown, it's very difficult to get the audience involved in the story because the audience doesn't know why it should be involved. Now, we know the Nerubians. We know that they were once a very powerful kingdom. Their origins, their downfall, it's all very, very mysterious. And I think anyone that loves lore, the same as I do, will sort of be very interested in learning about the Nerubians in greater detail. The other thing, of course, is the use of tropes. And this is where we get into the first conversation that I think is important. I've seen a lot of people point to this and sort of make an Arthas meme out of this, just going, oh, Blizzard is just rehashing the same story that they did with Arthas. And I thought it would be prudent for us to at least just establish a couple of things before we go any further. Yes, absolutely agree with you. This is the exact same thing where Arthas committed patricide, Queen Ansurek committed matricide. But it's the same thing, killing your parent and succeeding them. People were sort of going, succeeding you, mother, as a joke. Now, you might be saying, wow, Blizzard is just running out of ideas. They're just rehashing the same things over and over again. To that, I would say, if you go to most of the famous Greek tragedies, you go to a lot of famous dramas and stories, patricide, matricide, and infanticide are incredibly powerful tropes. You cannot write a story without the use of tropes, and sadly, there are only a handful of tropes that actually work in storytelling. Anyone that has ever tried to write a story using sort of unproven tropes tend to find themselves in hot water very quickly where the audience just does not connect with the story. The reason infanticide, matricide, and patricide is so powerful is because we fundamentally know, on a foundational level, the audience knows that what they're seeing is wrong. It's shocking to us. A kid should never kill their parent. What the hell is that, right? There's supposed to be a bond between a parent and a child. And to see a child remove that bond, or to see a parent remove that bond in the most violent way possible, has a profound effect on the audience. So it is phenomenal use of tropes when you do that. Where it will fall apart is when you use the trope and the trope is unbelievable. So the kid takes the parent's life, but there's no real reason for it. There's no real setup for it. There's no real understanding as to what the child was hoping to gain from this. So just a needless killing. In Arthas' scenario, Arthas took his father's life because he was driven by the Lich King at the time, and he was seeking the downfall of all human kingdoms to turn everyone undead. And if Lordaeron falls by losing its king, then the rest of Azeroth will fall alongside it. Of course, Arthas overcalculated that. Queen Ansurek has the exact same sort of motivation here, except where she goes from being mind-controlled by Xal'atath, or at least being influenced by Xal'atath, she is seeking to sort of reestablish the greatness of their once great empire that has come to ruin, and in her mind, under the tutelage of her mother, because her mother made the wrong decisions over and over again. She says it later. We'll discuss it when we get to it. But it is important to understand the trope is used very, very well. It's set up very, very well. And the motivations of Queen Ansurek is very well done. So I don't agree that this is just Blizzard running out of ideas. There are only so many ideas. It's how you utilize those ideas that really play the most significant role in all of this. But anyways, that being said and all of that set up, let's get into the actual cinematic here.
Slender is the strand that guides our destiny.
I do think, by the way, I should just point this out. I think that this spider is incredibly indicative of the origins of the Nerubians. And this is going to become a lot more clear when we get to the mural. The mural, I'll just quickly show you guys this one because, I'm not going to skip to the video part of it. This mural shows very clearly these almost spider-like, scarab-like beings being led to an unknown old god. This old god we've only seen once before, and it's in a picture in Chronicles Volume 3. It's a fifth old god unknown to us at all. We're going to get into this mural a little bit later when we get to the mural bit of the video, but I think the spider here is to show us where the Nerubians come from. The base species, as it were, that will ultimately serve as the influence for the Nerubian origin story.
Slender is the strand that guides our destiny, known only by true sacrifice.
You can instantly see from the architecture of the Nerubians, even as it is showcased here, this is obviously before the Nerubians became Xal'atath slaves, as it were. It is very much old god inspired. If you remember way back in the day, you saw the Black Empire, or at least glimpses of it. This is very similar to that. Of course, there is the spider influence to it as well, but you look at this, you look at the old god buildings in Battle for Azeroth, and it's a very similar architecture, color schematics, and all the rest of it.
In our kingdom of Azj-Kahet, no one understood this sacrifice more than Queen Neferis, my mother. I saw this when the...
Now, I want to pause on this because I think it's important. I think Blizzard is trying to show us something. They want to show us a level of sophistication that existed within the Black Empire. Even though this moment is playing out, and yes, we can talk about that as well, because in a minute here, this figure is going to tell them that they need to join Xal'atath, that they have been called. Now, the fact that this figure is cloaked, clothing suggests at least a fraction or a component of sophistication. It suggests that the Black Empire was in fact not just a mindless bunch of killing, just an entire empire of non-existence where creatures were completely mind-controlled and simply doing the bidding of the old gods. It suggests that these creatures had lives, that these creatures may have had duties, that these creatures may have had goals. So the Black Empire is clearly much more than what we have seen up until this day. Of course, we've always seen them in armor, the Faceless Ones specifically. They had their armor on, but this is a cloak. This suggests that there might have been something more. This Faceless One almost looks a little bit sophisticated, if you don't mind me saying that.
Black Empire came to conscript us for their last stand at Ny'alotha.
Okay. Now, I should talk about this because there's been a lot of conversation online about this moment. People saying, wait. Conscript them for the last stand tens of thousands of years ago? Or in BFA? Just right off the bat here, I think this was during BFA, because in a minute, they're going to talk about years later, right? And years later is not decades or eons later, it's years later, suggesting this was at BFA. The figure was sent by Xal'atath to call on the Nerubians to help with the fight against us in the Black Empire. And of course, as you'll see, you should know this, they refuse.
My mother refused them.
I want to point this out. At this very moment in time, the Nerubians are not in the service of the old gods. The Nerubians are, as far as we're concerned, just an empire, a great one. There is an old god, Faceless One, standing in front of them, wanting to conscript them to the old gods. And yet, if you look at the magic, the color scheme of the magic, and remember, in World of Warcraft cinematics, nothing is ever by accident. That color was chosen very specifically. That is void magic. This, I think, gives us a glimpse again into the origins of the Nerubians. They were created by the void. They were created by the old gods. Their magic, while, yes, spidery in nature, comes from a place of void. So they draw upon the void. And this, again, I made a video a few months ago where I spoke about the different magical sources of World of Warcraft and how these magical sources actually operate within World of Warcraft. And I suggested at the time that there are some magical forces that give freely. No matter what you do, you can draw on these magical forces if you so choose. And then there are those that are a lot more picky. They choose the one that is allowed to wield them. Light and nature, for example, choose the ones that are allowed to wield them. Not just everyone has access to them. Whereas void and foul and even arcane is a lot more willy-nilly, couldn't care less, nonchalant about who gets to wield their magic. And here you see exactly that. The Queen Mother is not in service to the old gods, and yet she has full access to magic inspired by the void.
For this treachery.
Now, this is another one we're going to do. There's a lot of repeating themes here, and I think Blizzard is trying to tell us stuff, so we need to pay attention. For this treachery. Treachery suggests that there was a prior arrangement, that you were once in service to someone, and now you decided not to serve them in their moment of greatest need, and then they will call that treachery. If the Nerubians never served the old gods, if the Nerubians never cared about the old gods and had no connection to the old gods, it would not be called treachery. How are they betraying you? They've never been a part of you. They just continued the long-standing tradition of not being a part of you. For this treachery, again, suggests that their origin story is very closely related to that of the old gods.
Your line will sever itself. This kingdom will wither with the waning of your worth.
It is a very cool moment. It is just nuts to see this creature be completely torn apart. There is something that caught my attention that I'm not... Something that catches my attention that I'm not entirely sure what that means. When the creature is cut in half, when this faceless one is cut in half by this magic of the Nerubian Queen, there's no blood. There's no... it doesn't look like flesh. It almost looks kind of like a construct that is being sort of torn apart, if that makes sense. I don't know what that means. I just wanted to point that out to be thorough. Maybe one of you know, and you can let me know in the comment section down below.
Strength defined us that day. And in that moment, we felt destined for greatness. But in the years that followed...
There you go. In the years that followed, you see them now withering away, struggling. Again, this suggests that their entire empire was once built on the void, on the old gods. And when they turned their back on the old gods, this is why the faceless one told her, your kingdom will wither and die. Without the old gods, without their blessing, without their life-giving power, your kingdom will not be able to sustain itself. The queen, of course, decided not to let her people go into this war. And now you might say to yourself, but Akelon, if it's true that the Nerubians came from the old gods and once served the old gods, doesn't that mean that the fact that they decided not to do it again just signifies how evil and bad the old gods are? And to that I would say, yeah, it could absolutely be. Or it could be that they remember the last time they followed the old gods into battle. The last time the old gods got their asses kicked. And this would suggest that everyone along with them. Remember, the Nerubian kingdom was once one of the greatest civilizations to ever exist on Azeroth. In fact, if I were to speculate, I would say that at the height of the Nerubian Empire, they would probably have been the rulers of Azeroth. They would most likely have been able to conquer the whole of Azeroth. They were vast in number, and they were incredibly advanced. Look at their buildings. Look at their civilization. And their civilization predates that of mortal races by thousands of years. So clearly, they are a force to be reckoned with. But they obviously got kicked in the nuts when the old gods fell. They were basically pushed to the outskirts of civilization, driven underground, hiding in order to save themselves, hiding away from mortals, hiding away. And you know that they weren't all that powerful, because even as things were getting bad, they at no point sought to leave Ankahet, right? Ashkahet. At no point did they think, hey, we can go conquer these mortals that live on Azeroth and we can take their shit. They weren't powerful enough to do that. It suggests that the link between them and the old gods were ridiculously strong, and once that link was severed, there was very little left.
Our greatness was tarnished. Look at them out there. Wretched. Starving.
And I do think this gives us some insight into Princess Ansurek at this point. Of course, she will become the new queen. But I do think it gives us insight. She genuinely did this because she cares for her people. She is misguided, sure, but she cares. She cares deeply for the suffering of her people, and she believes that her mother is making the wrong decision. She believes that there is a better way, and that Xal'atath's way gives them back the greatness that was lost.
I am not immune to our people's suffering. I believe better days will come.
Not if you keep failing to seize the moment. What was the point of you freeing our future only to leave us buried in the past.
This line I do not understand. Freeing our future, again, suggests that there was a much closer cooperation between the old gods and the Nerubians before the Nerubians denied the old gods their conscription, because they were freed in their future. But then buried in the past, what is she suggesting? Is it because the mother is sticking to the tradition of staying and refusing to go to the outside world, refusing to join the outside world? What is it that she's actually referring to here? Because from my perspective, she's just running right back to Xal'atath, which means you freed our president. Ansurek says it here. You freed our future when you denied conscription, but now I'm going to go back and reconscript us. So how do you hold these two thoughts? I don't know what that means exactly, but it is something that bothered me. Maybe one of you know.
You comprehend so little.
And this suggests that the mother knows something much darker, much deeper, and much more profound than what the daughter could ever understand, at least at the moment. You comprehend so little, suggesting the mother didn't go to the outside world. The mother didn't join the mortal races. She didn't conquer the mortal races, and it was for a very good reason. Don't know what that reason is. It could be that, maybe the Titans gave the Nerubians a choice. Maybe the Titans told the Nerubians, we will spare your lives, but you will stay underground, you will stay in your cities. If we spot you even for a minute venturing outside your allotted confinement, we will come back and we will destroy you once and for all. That's all I can sort of think at the moment, at least.
There is much for you to learn before you can be queen.
Mother! Mother!
The mural, again, just signify this. It's important to understand. This mural, the fact that it's in the cinematic, Queen Nesurek is still, or Neferek is still alive in that moment. The mural is already there. So we can now at least put a timeline to this mural. We can't, before we didn't really know where the mural fit into. Maybe after Xal'atath conscripted them, they built this mural as a sort of great moment to the old gods. This suggests that this is a significant part of their history. This is a moment in their history that they remember, that they celebrate. This is the reason we have murals and statues and things of that nature. It's to remember the past, sometimes bad, sometimes troubling, but nonetheless, it's important to remember that. That is probably one of the reasons the mother says you comprehend so little, because she remembers this. She was taught this. As queen, she had to know what life was like at the time. And again, you look at the scarabs, as I've already explained, and you look at these faceless ones that seems to be leading these little scarabs up to this old god, the unknown one. And I think that is where the Nerubians come from. That is their origin story. That's why this mural exists. Very important here. The crystal in the mural, this is the mural from the game at the minute. You see that this mural, the crystal here, is purple. And it is open. The crystal here, and you could say, but Akalon, the colors are different because you can see even this old god doesn't have color in the old god. Again, the crystal is closed here. There's nothing open about this crystal right now, suggesting that something happened. This is a living mural. It's not just a normal mural. It's not just a normal part of their history. This is a living one. And perhaps even the eyes of this old god lit up once the Nerubians accepted the old gods back into their kingdom, which would suggest that not only were the Nerubians the result of the old gods and how the old gods created them, but their very empire, their architecture, their buildings, their food source, their energy source, their everything was built on the blood of the old gods. And when they rejected the old gods, all of this went away. The closing of the crystal could literally refer to that. The crystal closed. In other words, the magic that flew from the old gods to the Nerubians had also now been closed. I love this moment with the flame stopping. This suggests a couple of things to me. The first is, we'll see a bit later, Xal'atath created almost like this pocket dimension where she could talk to the queen in her own sort of memories and dreams, but also that there is a form of time manipulation that Xal'atath and the Void has access to in much greater effect than what we previously thought. We knew that they saw all timelines, but this suggests that they do have the ability to screw around with the timeline, or at least with time itself.
Ansurek? Are you seeing this? You have...
I love the underlying voices. As she's standing there, she's saying, Ansurek, you see that? The voices, it immediately tells us what is coming. And then, of course, we see the crystal. The closed one at this point. Not open, not active, and yet Xal'atath comes from this crystal. This crystal, I firmly believe, is Baladar. I believe that is what this crystal is. And I believe I finally understand what this crystal signifies. I believe this crystal is how the Void arrived on Azeroth. I believe the entire story that the Titans told us about the old gods and about the Black Empire and about the Void Lords is completely wrong. I believe this crystal is how the old gods got here. I believe that now that you're seeing the crystal go from light to void suggests the relationship between the light and the void. It suggests why Xal'atath says the Naru are simply brothers and sisters who have lost their way, but they will return to their masters in time. The light and the void are incredibly closely connected to one another, and even though they view each other as quote-unquote enemies, they're not actually enemies of one another. They're two sides of the same coin. And I think that the light claimed this crystal for themselves. After the void used this crystal to get a foothold on Azeroth, it was the light that sent their own servants to claim this crystal for themselves, to give them the ability to arrive on Azeroth and influence, or at least counter-influence, the void on the planet. I will go so far as to quickly share a theory that I'm busy working on, so it's still a work in progress. But I now, more firmly than ever, believe that the Old Gods is a mix between void and something more natural to Azeroth. I believe that the Old Gods are, in fact, not the creation of the Void Lords, but that they are the original sort of elemental lords of decay. When Spirit was absorbed by Azeroth in the beginning, decay was the one elemental force that were left unchecked. All of the other elemental forces had their counter force that could keep them in balance. Decay, which was supposed to be kept in balance by Spirit, could now just basically grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. So rather than just having one elemental lord, Decay created for itself 4, maybe even 5 elemental lords. When the Void arrived on Azeroth, and I believe that Xal'atath is the first that arrived on Azeroth, when the Void arrived on Azeroth, the Void went to these old gods and offered these old gods power. The power that the old gods accepted. Power that the old gods wanted. This turned the old gods from creatures of decay into creatures of the void. But the fact that Yogg-Saron's blood is the very thing that creates Galakrond suggests that the old gods does have an element of decay inside of it. And I'll show you guys just one thing that sort of proves my point, although, you know, this is speculation, so it could be wrong. But you hear this in the conversation between Xal'atath and N'Zoth.
Honor our bargain. Free me to find my own fate.
Free me to find my own fate. Honor our bargain. In other words, Xal'atath, I didn't serve you. We had a bargain. I upheld my end of the bargain, not in service to you. This was our bargain. I brought you the mortals. I did everything you asked. Now free me, so that I may find my own fate. This suggests that what Xal'atath was here for, what Xal'atath was meant for, was never the same as what the old gods wanted. The old gods was always and everywhere a tool for Xal'atath. That perhaps explains how she ended up in the blade. The old gods realized that Xal'atath simply views them as a tool, and they were the ones who betrayed her. They were the ones who imprisoned her, because if she's in the blade, she can't bring about the Void Lord's return, and the old gods can get to do all the things that they want to do. Now, of course, they would have been as influenced as everyone else in the universe, but it also explains the gift of flesh. Just FYI, just very quickly, as another aside here, as another bit of evidence for it, the gift of flesh is the ultimate display of decay. Decay is entropy, or at least entropy as one of its elements, decay within it. The old gods having the ability to turn constructs into flesh suggests that, again, to me, just further strengthens this idea that they have power over decay. Constructs will not decay. Flesh, on the other hand, will absolutely decay. But anyways, let's get back into it.
I've heard my voice in your dreams, great queen.
Now, the fact that there are these flashes, you see these flashbacks. So you see this, for example, here you see Xal'atath. You see what is in front of her looks like Nerubians. So this is clearly a moment that happened long ago. This is clearly a moment that didn't just happen. It didn't just transpire. This is a moment from long ago. You heard my voice. You heard me in your dreams. You see these Nerubian creatures worshipping Xal'atath. And you see what looks almost like a sun in front of her, or perhaps a lunar eclipse. Again, I'm not going to say that I absolutely know for a fact that Xal'atath is a creature of Elune, but I do think that there is a very big connection between Xal'atath and Elune. There you see the blade. So Xal'atath, again, she shows you how she once stood during the height of the Black Empire. She stood in front of the Nerubians, and the Nerubians worshipped her as a queen. And then it shows the blade. So a sort of a recording of time. Once a queen, now a blade, now back, right? Back to being worshipped, back to being this great. I think there is so much more to Xal'atath than what we actually realize in World of Warcraft, and I think Blizzard is going to be revealing a lot of that to us. But anyways, let's continue.
The Harbinger.
The Harbinger, the way she says it suggests she knows of her. She may not have been around during the original days of the Black Empire. She may not have been around when Xal'atath stood in front of the Nerubians and the Nerubians prayed to her, but she was told about it. She was told about the Harbinger, who the Harbinger is and what the Harbinger wants.
Yes, of the empire that was.
Again, to me, suggesting of the empire that was, suggesting that Xal'atath may have been the one to build the Black Empire. She was the one behind the Black Empire, and at the height of her power, the old gods betrayed her. The old gods were the ones who placed her inside the blade. Or, I just thought of another theory. If you look at Xal'atath, if you look at the blade, I have made this point before. It has very similar architecture to that of Titan weapons. Specifically Sargeras' weapons. It is entirely plausible that it was the Titans that captured Xal'atath, and once Xal'atath fell, the Titans could no longer, or the old gods no longer had the power to withstand the old gods. And it was in this moment that the old gods were imprisoned, because Xal'atath was now finally imprisoned, and the imprisonment would hold track with what the Titans like to do, which is to imprison people, as we all know. The old gods being dead, I think it's important. We've speculated in the past, just for fun, what if the old gods are not dead? This is now confirmed multiple times over, and in fact, we see the corpse of N'Zoth. So now we know that the old gods are dead.
Dead. The Empire lies in ashes, and a shadow has fallen on your kingdom. But the blood of the old gods can make your people powerful.
It is important that you understand the blood of the old gods. In other words, the power of the old gods never came from the old gods. It came from the blood of the old gods. Again, just reinforcing this idea that the power of the old gods was a borrowed power. It was a power that didn't exist natively to them, but it was a power that was gifted to them, that flew and absorbed their entire beings into it, to the point where their very blood became a catalyst for this power. And using this blood, they will too now become powerful as a result of this. Now, you could also use that exact same reasoning to prove the opposite, that the old gods were in fact of the void, because their very being, their very blood is absorbed and contains the power of the void. But I do think the evidence for the old gods being creatures of decay and instead accepting the void into themselves and therefore becoming a bit of a merger between the two, I think that evidence stacks up a little bit better, but I could be wrong. You can let me know in the comment section down below if you don't agree with me. I welcome discussions like that.
Full again. Your reign could last for eternity.
I love the fact that we see the blood of the old gods turning them humanoid. I think, again, there's been so many lies about the old gods and about what the old gods did on Azeroth. And I have this sneaky suspicion that we are going to find out in the coming expansion that all life, all mortal life, comes from the void. I've shared this theory before. I'll quickly recap it. You can find the video on the channel if you really want to go into detail on this. But the way I think it happened was the old gods created races. We know that the goblins were a race before they became highly intelligent. We know the trolls appear to be a natural race, but even there, I think the trolls, the goblins, maybe even the humans, or what would eventually become the humans, the Vrykul, were all flesh. The Titans arrived, saw these fleshy little creatures, and turned these creatures into constructs, thereby sort of co-opting what was already created, but ordering it as the Titans are wont to do. These constructs now, of course, serve blindly because that is what they're supposed to do, even though we know that not all of the constructs served blindly. We know this because there's writings from Loken and from Tyr, or writings from Tyr and from Odin, the towels of constructs that left because they didn't believe the lies of the Titans, and they decided instead that they're going to go, they don't want to be part of the Titan dream. The only way constructs can do that is if those constructs were at some point able to exercise some level of free will, because we see that most of the actual constructs of the Titans simply do what is required of them. So this suggests that the Titans may not have been as in control of these constructs as we had previously believed, and I think it was the old gods that re-gifted them that curse of flesh. So from flesh to construct, back to flesh. But the fact that, you know, there is definitely something interesting about them going from being spider-esque kind of beasts to now looking a lot more humanoid as a result of the old god blood.
All you have to do is take my hand.
Your words are tempting, but the cost is too great. I would never risk my kingdom for such power.
Just again want to reiterate, she knows something about what happened the first time. She knows what happens when the old gods lose. And she does not want to put her people through that again. Either that, or there is a much darker power at play here.
Mother, who are you talking to?
Ghosts, dearest. As always, they are my ready counsel.
The ghosts always, they are my ready counsel. Is she hearing other voices? Are there other voices that speak to her, or is this simply, for the longest time, Xal'atath has been speaking to her, and she just calls them ghosts? I don't know, but it is an interesting thing to think about.
I'm not sorry for what I said. I only want our people to be great once more.
Greatness is fleeting. What we must do now is endure. Your time will come, child, but only when you are ready.
We've already discussed this moment, so I'm not going to go into it again. But yeah, this is a big moment, and it's a moment that makes sense with everything that led up to this moment.
What have you done?
You're not the only one seeing ghosts, Mother.
How
I love this.
sad to have a queen so wise, and yet so ignorant.
I think what needs to be pointed out here, first and foremost, is the Void. The Void has plans within plans. If the Queen Mother isn't going to do what we want, then Princess Ansurek will do what we want. Plans within plans within plans. I just love it. I want to point specifically to the cloak of Xal'atath. You can see the stars, almost like a swimming galaxy within her stars. I think, genuinely speaking, that what you're going to see in the next few moments, and I'll play this pretty much uninterrupted, although I might think of other things. You're going to see the exact power of Xal'atath. Where the old gods were beings of decay that simply accepted the power of the void, Xal'atath is a creature of pure void energy. Everything about her is void. She isn't just consumed by it. She isn't just borrowing this power. She is this power. This goes back to our discussion about the blade and her being imprisoned inside the blade that connects to the fall of the Black Empire, perhaps. This suggests that as long as the Harbinger is alive, the void is close to unstoppable.
To the call of destiny.
Look at the purple blood there. Just, sorry, I know I literally just said I'm not going to pause this match, but the purple blood again, linked to the void being a much closer relative to these Nerubians than previously thought.
Her name is Xal'atath. You had your chance, Mother. With this power, Ashkahet is
very similar to Azhara. Very similar look to Azhara, which I think just interesting. Let's put it this way. Very interesting that the look is so close to that of Azhara.
bound.
And of course, Azhara's look was given to her by N'Zoth. This look is given to her by Xal'atath.
We will rise. We will conquer. And together, we will finally claim our destiny.
Long live Queen Ansurek.
I need to point this out. I think, again, this entire scene is meant to show the power of Xal'atath. It is meant to show that Xal'atath isn't just a mere harbinger. Xal'atath isn't just a mere servant. She's not just a mere blade. Xal'atath is ridiculously powerful. Perhaps more powerful than what most can imagine. perhaps the placing in the blade was almost like a quelling of her power, which is why she returned to the void to reestablish that connection to the power that she once had. And now that she's back, if you look at her entire being, everything seems to ooze with this void-esque kind of power. It is absolutely, in my opinion, phenomenal. And again, the thing that I love about this most is the setting up of the stakes. The fact that the story is almost unashamedly begging you to come try it. Now, I'll quickly say a couple of final thoughts before I end this, because it's already 46 minutes. But I will just very quickly say, I don't think that Queen Ansurek is going to be killed at the end of the War Within. I know a lot of people have pointed to that, saying, oh, she says all of these cool things, but we know that she will die at the end. If I look at the cinematic, if I look at the story of Queen Ansurek, it feels as if she's being set up for something much greater. So while she might get her ass kicked in the raid, I think that there's something deeper that's going to go on. She's either going to be resurrected or saved last minute or whatever the case might be. But it feels like there's some kind of deeper storyline here. But that's just my read on it, because this is the same thing that happened with Arthas. Arthas killed his father, and there were many years of more story of Arthas and the things that Arthas did as the Lich King. And I feel like with Queen Ansurek, it's going to be the same thing. There is a much grander story at play. But you can let me know in the comment section down below if you feel like I'm just wrong and you have your own opinion. Remember, $5 over on Patreon get you access to the giveaway at the end of every month on the 25th. And as we get more people subscribing, I'll eventually add things like graphics cards and more money and more giveaways, because it's the least I can do. It at least gives something back to the community. So please sign up there. Links are in the description down below. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, be good to each other. Be kind to each other. And I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.